The air inside Bella's roadside cafe carried the comforting aroma of sizzling burgers, frying onions, and freshly brewed tea. It was a small, weathered diner perched on the edge of a dusty highway town, its neon sign flickering faintly against the twilight sky. Inside, the hum of conversation mingled with the clatter of plates as truckers, locals, and weary travelers filled the red vinyl booths. At the heart of it all was Clara Hensley, a waitress with a quiet strength and a smile that could brighten even the gloomiest day. Her auburn hair was tied back in a loose bun, and her apron was stained with the day's work, but her eyes sparkled with a warmth that made the diner feel like home. Clara had worked at Bella's for 3 years, pouring her heart into every shift. She knew her regulars by name, Mr. Jenkins, who always ordered a double cheeseburger with extra pickles, Sally, the schoolteacher who tipped in quarters, and the young trucker, Danny, who left sketches of the road on napkins as thanks. But tonight, as the clock ticked toward 8 p.m., something caught her eye beyond the diner's streaked windows. A figure sat slumped against the curb under the dim glow of a street lamp. He was a man, older than most of the transients who passed through, with a gray beard tangled like storm clouds and a coat so threadbare it barely clung to his frame. His hands rested in his lap, trembling slightly, and his gaze was fixed on the ground as if he'd forgotten how to look up. Clara paused mid-stride, a tray of iced tea glasses balanced in her hands. She watched him for a moment, her heart tugging at the sight. The highway town wasn't kind to those who fell through the cracks, people moved too fast to notice, too busy to care. But Clara couldn't look away. There was something about him, a quiet dignity beneath the dirt and despair, that stirred her. She delivered the drinks to her table, scribbled an order for a steak sandwich, and then slipped behind the counter. "Hey, Lou," she called softly to the cook, a burly man with a grease-stained apron and a perpetual scowl. "Mind if I whip something up real quick? Won't take but a minute." Lou grunted, flipping a burger on the grill. "Long as it ain't comin' out of my paycheck." Clara smiled and got to work. She piled a plate with a thick slice of meatloaf, leftover from the lunch special, added a scoop of mashed potatoes with gravy, and tossed in a handful of steamed carrots. She poured a mug of black coffee, strong and steaming, and tucked a buttered roll on the side. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, hearty, and real. With the tray in hand, she pushed through the diner's glass door and stepped into the cool night air. "Excuse me, sir," she said gently, crouching down a few feet from the man. He flinched, his head jerking up, and his pale blue eyes met hers, startled, wary, but piercingly clear. "I thought you might like something to eat." The man blinked, his cracked lips parting as if he hadn't spoken in days. I ain't got money, miss," he rasped, his voice rough like gravel. "Don't need any," Clara replied, setting the tray on the curb beside him. "It's on me. Please, take it." He stared at the food, then back at her, his hands hovering uncertainly. "Why'd you do this?" he asked, almost accusingly, as if kindness were a trick he'd learned to distrust. Clara sat back on her heels, meeting his gaze. "Because I've been hungry before. Not like you, maybe, but enough to know it's a heavy thing to carry alone. My name's Clara. What's yours?" He hesitated, then muttered, "Henry. Henry Voss." His fingers brushed the edge of the plate, tentative, like he was afraid it might vanish. "I wasn't always like this, you know. Used to have a shop, fixed cars, built things. Then the bank took it all. Wife left. Been out here ever since." Clara nodded, her throat tightening. "I'm sorry, Henry. That's more than anyone should have to bear. But you're still here, and that counts for something." Henry's eyes softened, a flicker of something, gratitude, maybe, breaking through the hardness. He picked up the fork, hands still shaking, and took a small bite of the meatloaf. Clara watched him eat, the silence between them comfortable, until the diner door slammed open behind her. "Clara," a voice barked. She turned to see Mr. Pritchard, the diner's owner, storming toward her. He was a short, wiry man with a pinched face and a temper that flared at the slightest inconvenience. "What in God's name are you doing?" Clara stood, brushing dirt from her knees. "Just giving Henry here some food, Mr. Pritchard." He was hungry. Pritchard's face darkened, his thin lips curling into a sneer. "Hungry? This ain't a soup kitchen, girl. You're giving away my stock, my profits, to some bum? You think that's how I keep this place running?" "It's just one plate," Clara said, her voice steady despite the heat rising in her cheeks. "He's a person, not a problem." "A person?" Pritchard spat. "He's a leech. You pull stunts like this, next thing I know, every drifter on this highway's lined up for handouts. You're done, Clara. Fired. Get your things and get out." The words hit like a slap, but Clara didn't flinch. The diner had gone quiet, every eye on the scene unfolding outside. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and set it on the curb beside Henry's tray. "If kindness costs me this job, then it's not a job worth keeping," she said, her voice ringing clear. She gave Henry a small nod, "Take care, okay?" and walked away, her boots crunching on the gravel as she headed toward the empty stretch of road. She made it halfway to the bus stop, her mind reeling, anger at Pritchard, worry about rent, a strange pride in what she'd done, when headlights cut through the dusk. A dusty pickup truck rolled to a stop beside her, and the window cranked down. A man leaned out, his face shadowed by a worn baseball cap. "You Clara?" he asked, his voice low and curious. She stopped, wary. "Yeah. Who are you?" "Name's Jack," he said, tipping his cap slightly. "Saw what happened back there. Got a minute to talk?" Clara glanced back at the diner, then at the man. 30 minutes ago, she'd been pouring coffee. Now, her life was unraveling, and somehow, she felt like this stranger might be part of what came next. Clara stood on the roadside, the evening chill seeping through her thin jacket as Jack's pickup idled beside her. The man's face was weathered but kind, with deep lines etched around his eyes and a scruff of salt and pepper stubble on his jaw. He didn't look like a local, his truck had out-of-state plates, and his clothes carried the dust of a long journey. She hesitated, weighing her options. She had no job, no plan, and the last bus wouldn't come for another hour. Curiosity, and maybe a flicker of hope, won out. "All right," she said, crossing her arms. "What's this about?" Jack nodded toward the passenger seat. "Hop in. Won't take long, and it's warmer in here." Clara climbed in, the truck's interior smelling faintly of motor oil and pine air freshener. Jack pulled onto the highway, driving slow, the hum of the engine filling the silence. "I was in the diner," he began, keeping his eyes on the road. "Saw you with that fella, Henry, you called him. Watched the whole thing go down with your boss, too. Gotta say, I've seen a lot of folks turn a blind eye to people like him. You didn't." Clara shrugged, staring out the window at the passing scrubland. "Didn't seem right to ignore him. He's been through enough." Jack chuckled, a dry, warm sound. "That's what I figured. You've got a spine, Clara. Most people would have kept their head down, kept the paycheck. Not you." She turned to him, frowning. "You drove out here to tell me that?" "Nope." Jack reached into the glove box and pulled out a weathered business card, handing it to her. It read, "Jack Tanner, Tanner's Garage and Community Works." Below it was an address 2 towns over. "I run a shop, fix cars, mostly. But I've been working on something bigger. A place for folks like Henry. Veterans, down on their luck types. Give 'em a meal, a bed, some tools to get back on their feet. Problem is, I'm short on people who care enough to make it work." Clara studied the card, her thumb tracing the faded ink. "You're offering me a job?" "More than that," Jack said, glancing at her. I'm offering you a chance to do what you just did back there, help people, but on a scale that matters. I need someone with heart. Pays not much to start, but it's honest work. What do you say? Her mind raced. She'd never been one for grand plans, waiting tables had been steady, safe. But safe had just blown up in her face, and here was a stranger with an idea that felt right. Why me? She asked. You don't even know me. Jack tapped the steering wheel, thoughtful. I know you stood up to a bully for a man who couldn't stand up for himself. That's enough for me. Clara tucked the card into her pocket. I'll think about it. Can you drop me at the bus stop? Jack nodded, pulling over a minute later. Take your time. Offers open. He tipped his cap again as she stepped out, and the truck rumbled off into the night. The next morning, Clara woke to a buzzing phone. She'd barely slept, replaying the day before, Henry's gratitude, Pritchard's rage, Jack's offer. She answered groggily, expecting a bill collector. Instead, it was her friend Mia, a cashier at Bella's. Clara, you're not gonna believe this, Mia said, her voice breathless. That guy you fed? Henry? He came back this morning. Left a note for you at the counter. Pritchard tried to throw it out, but I snagged it. Clara sat up, heart pounding. What's it say? Mia read aloud, Clara, you gave me more than a meal. You gave me a reason to keep going. I'm heading north, got a cousin who might take me in. Thank you. Henry Voss. Clara's eyes stung with tears. She thanked Mia, hung up, and pulled Jack's card from her pocket. By noon, she was on a bus to Tanner's garage, her few belongings in a duffel bag. Jack met her at the shop, a sprawling lot with a tin-roof garage and a half-built annex out back. He grinned when he saw her. Knew you'd show. The work started small. Clara cooked meals in a makeshift kitchen, handed out blankets, listened to stories from men and women who'd lost everything. But word spread. A local reporter caught wind of her story, the waitress fired for kindness, and ran a piece in the paper. Donations trickled in, canned goods, clothes, a beat-up van for outreach. Jack taught her to change oil and patch tires, and soon she was fixing cars alongside him, her hands black with grease and her spirit lighter than it had been in years. Then came the twist. One evening, as Clara swept the garage floor, a sleek black sedan pulled into the lot. A man stepped out, tall, silver-haired, dressed in a suit that screamed money. Jack stiffened beside her, muttering, "Well, I'll be damned." "Clara Hensley?" the man asked, his voice smooth as polished stone. "That's me," she said, wiping her hands on a rag. He smiled faintly. "My name's Edward Voss. Henry's my uncle. I owe you a debt I can't repay." Clara's jaw dropped. Henry's cousin wasn't just some farmer up north. Edward Voss was a real estate mogul, a man whose name graced skyscrapers and charity galas. And he'd come looking for her. Edward Voss stood in the dusty lot of Tanner's garage, his polished shoes a stark contrast to the oil-stained gravel. Clara stared at him, the broom still in her hands, trying to process his words. "Henry's your uncle," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Edward nodded, his expression softening. "He showed up at my door last week, first time I'd seen him in years. Told me about a waitress named Clara who fed him when no one else would. Said it woke something in him, gave him the push to find me. I didn't even know he was still alive, let alone on the streets." Clara set the broom against the wall, her mind spinning. "I'm glad he's okay. But why are you here?" Edward reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "Because what you did matters. Henry's living with me now, getting clean, seeing a doctor. He's got a shot at a real life again, and that's because of you. I want to help you do more of that." He handed her the envelope. Inside was a check, $50,000, made out to Tanner's garage and community works. Jack, who'd been silent until now, let out a low whistle. That's a hell of a thank you. It's a start, Edward said. I've got resources, money, connections. I'd like to partner with you. Turn this into something bigger. A proper shelter, job training, whatever you need. You've got the vision, I've got the means. Clara's hands trembled as she held the check. This could change everything. It already has, Edward said. Henry's proof of that. Over the next few months, Tanner's garage transformed. The annex became a bunkhouse with cots and a kitchen. Edward's funding built a workshop where Clara and Jack taught mechanics to anyone willing to learn, veterans, ex-convicts, kids aging out of foster care. Clara's story spread further, picked up by a regional news station. Soon, volunteers arrived, a retired nurse to run health checks, a teacher to tutor GED classes, even a chef who'd once worked Michelin-star kitchens, now cooking for $50 a night. Clara threw herself into it, her days a blur of grease and gratitude. She kept Henry's note pinned above her workbench, a reminder of why she'd started. But not everyone was happy. Mr. Pritchard, still fuming over her stunt, spread rumors around town, that she was a bleeding heart wasting good money, that the garage was a magnet for trouble. Some locals listened, eyeing the bunkhouse with suspicion. Clara ignored them, but the tension simmered. One night, a brick crashed through the garage window, glass shattering across the floor. Scrawled on it in marker, "Go back to waiting tables." Jack wanted to call the cops, but Clara shook her head. "They're scared of change," she said. "We'll keep going." And they did. The bunkhouse filled up, and success stories emerged. A vet named Carlos landed a job at a dealership. A woman named Trish started her own cleaning business. Clara's quiet act of kindness had sparked a movement, and Edward's support turned it into a force. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. It was a crisp Saturday morning when the black SUV rolled into the lot. Clara was under a car, tightening a bolt, when Jack tapped her shoulder. "You're gonna want to see this." She slid out, wiping her hands, and froze. A man stepped from the vehicle, tall, broad-shouldered, with a presence that silenced the chatter around her. He wore a simple overcoat, but his face was unmistakable. Governor Daniel Hargrove, the state's leader, known for his no-nonsense reforms and rare public appearances. "Clara Hensley?" he asked, extending a hand. She shook it, dazed. "Yes, sir." What's this about?" Hargrove smiled faintly. "I heard about you. The waitress who got fired for feeding a homeless man. The woman who turned a garage into a lifeline. Edward Voss sent me your story, said you're doing more for this state than half my cabinet." Clara laughed nervously. "I'm just trying to help people." "And you are," Hargrove said. "I've got a proposal. We're launching a statewide program, Second Chances for the Overlooked. Jobs, housing, training. I want you to run it. Not just here, but everywhere." Clara blinked, the weight of his words sinking in. "Me? I don't have degrees or anything." "You've got something better," Hargrove said. "Proof it works. Look around, you've built this from nothing. Say yes, and I'll give you the resources to take it statewide." She glanced at Jack, who grinned. "Told you you're a force, kid." Clara took a deep breath. "Okay. Yes." The governor's visit made headlines. Pritchard's rumors faded as the town rallied behind Clara. The program launched 6 months later, with centers in every county, and Clara at the helm, still grease-stained, still smiling. Henry, now a mechanic at Edward's firm, showed up at the ribbon cutting, his eyes bright with pride. Years later, Clara would stand in that same lot, now a gleaming community hub, and think of that night with Henry. One meal had changed everything, not just for him, but for her, and for thousands more. Kindness, she'd learned, wasn't just a spark. It was a fire that could light up the world.